The stars outside the window were beautiful. They always were. But Captain Yuna did not have time to look at them today. She stood on the bridge of the orbital defense station called Bright Dawn, and she watched her crew die. The station had been hit 17 times in the last hour. Each hit shook the walls and threw people to the floor. Each had killed someone. Yuna had stopped counting the dead. She needed to focus on keeping the living alive. Blood ran down the side of her face from a cut on her head. Her uniform was torn at the shoulder. Her hands were steady on the command console, but inside, her heart was racing like a wild animal trying to escape a cage. "Captain," said Lieutenant Taiho from the weapons station. His voice was calm, but his face was pale. "Main batteries are offline. We have only secondary weapons now." Yuna nodded. She had expected this. The Kalari had been hitting their weapon systems first. They were smart enemies. Cold and calculating, like machines made of flesh. "How many ships?" she asked. 206, said Taiho. "They have us surrounded. 206 warships. Against one damaged station with 43 crew members still alive. Below them, on the planet called Vega 7, 3 million colonists waited. Men, women, and children. Farmers and teachers and doctors. People who had come to this distant world to build new lives. The Kalari would kill them all. That was what the Kalari did. They had destroyed 12 star systems already. Entire planets turned to ash and glass. Billions of lives ended. And now they had come here. Chief Engineer Bora's voice came through the communication system. She was down in the reactor room, trying to keep the station alive. "Captain, the reactor is failing. I can give you maybe 6 hours. After that, we lose power completely." 6 hours. Yuna closed her eyes for a moment. 6 hours was not enough time. The colony ships could not evacuate 3 million people in 6 hours. The military fleet was 12 days away. Help was not coming. She opened her eyes and looked at her crew. 43 people. Some of them she had served with for years. Others were new, fresh from the academy. All of them were looking at her, waiting for orders. They knew they were going to die. She could see it in their eyes. But none of them were running. None of them were crying. They stood at their stations and did their jobs because that was what humans did. Yuna felt a strange pride fill her chest. These were her people. These were humans. "Open a channel," she said. Not to the Kalari, to the colony below. Communications Officer Hyan looked surprised, but he did as she ordered. "Channel open, Captain." Yuna took a deep breath. When she spoke, her voice was steady and clear. "People of Vega 7, this is Captain Yuna of the Bright Dawn. The Kalari Armada has surrounded us. We cannot defeat them. We cannot hold them forever. But we can give you time. Get to your ships. Scatter in every direction. Run and hide and survive. Tell the galaxy what happened here. Tell them we did not go quietly. Tell them we fought." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer. "Tell them we bought you every second we could." She cut the channel and turned to her crew. Navigator Yunji set a course for the center of the Kalari formation. Yunji stared at her. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and quick hands. "Captain, if we go there, we will be in range of all their weapons." "Yes," said Yuna, "and they will be in range of ours." Understanding dawned on Yunji's face. She turned to her console and began plotting the course. "It will take us 40 minutes to reach optimal position. Then we have 40 minutes to get ready." Yuna looked at Taiho. "Lieutenant, I want every weapon we have ready to fire. If it can shoot, I want it shooting." Taiho nodded. There was no fear in his eyes now. Only determination. "Understood, Captain." Yuna activated the station-wide communication. "All hands, this is the captain. We are moving to attack position. I know what I'm asking of you. I know that many of us will not survive the next few hours. But every minute we fight is a minute our people below use to escape. Every Kalari ship we damage is one less ship chasing our families. We are the shield. We are the wall. And we will not break. She released the button and watched through the window as the station began to move. It was slow and painful, like a wounded animal dragging itself forward. But it was moving. The Kalari noticed. Of course they did. Their ships began to adjust position, turning their weapons toward the approaching station. They are confused, said Hyan, monitoring their communications. They did not expect us to attack. Good, said Yuna. Let them be confused. The first shots came 3 minutes later. Bright beams of energy slammed into the station's shields. The shields held for the first shot, and the second. On the third shot, they failed. The station shook violently. Somewhere behind Yuna, a console exploded. She heard someone scream. She did not turn around. She could not turn around. Return fire, she ordered. The Bright Dawn's remaining weapons spoke. Missiles and energy beams reached out across the void. Most of them missed or were stopped by Kalari shields. But one missile found its mark. A Kalari cruiser, caught off guard, took the hit directly on its engine section. The ship broke apart in a beautiful explosion of light and debris. Yuna felt nothing. One ship down. 205 to go. Keep firing, she said. Do not stop until we have nothing left to fire. The battle continued. The Kalari poured fire into the Bright Dawn. Deck after deck was destroyed. Crew members died at their stations. The air grew thin as life support systems failed. The temperature dropped as heating systems went offline, but the station kept moving forward. And the weapons kept firing. Sergeant Jiwoo led her security team through the damaged sections, sealing hull breaches with emergency patches. When the patches ran out, she used metal plates torn from the walls. When those ran out, she used her own body, pressing herself against a small breach until her team could find something to seal it with. Medical officer Dohun worked in a corridor lit only by emergency lights. He had no proper equipment, no clean operating room. He had a field medical kit and his own 2 hands. He performed surgery on 3 wounded crew members using only basic tools. All 3 survived. This was what humans did. When everything fell apart, when hope was gone, when death was certain, they kept going. They helped each other. They refused to give up. The Kalari High Commander watched from his flagship. He was old for his kind, with dark scales and 4 cold eyes that had seen 100 conquered worlds. He did not understand what he was seeing. The human station should have surrendered. Any logical species would have surrendered. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and dying. Surrender was the only rational choice. But the humans were not surrendering. They were attacking. They were dying and attacking and dying some more. And still they would not stop. The High Commander felt something he had not felt in a very long time. It took him a moment to recognize it. It was doubt. Destroy them, he ordered. Destroy them now. All ships, focus fire on that station. The Armada responded. 205 ships turned their weapons on the Bright Dawn and fired together. The station shuddered under the assault. Fires broke out on every deck. The hull began to crack and break apart, and still the Bright Dawn moved forward. And still its weapons fired. Captain Yuna stood on her bridge, surrounded by smoke and fire and death. She watched another Kalari ship explode under her station's fire. That is 2, she said quietly. Let us see how many more we can take with us. The Kalari High Commander stood before the great window of his flagship and watched the human station burn. It was a small thing, that station. A tiny metal shell filled with soft creatures who should have died hours ago. And yet it was still there. Still fighting. Still killing his ships. 4 cruisers lost now. 4 ships crewed by thousands of Kalari warriors, destroyed by a broken station with less than 40 humans inside. The High Commander's claws tightened on the railing before him. Why did they not surrender? Asked his second-in-command, a younger Kalari named Veth. They cannot win. They must know they cannot win. The High Commander did not answer. He had been asking himself the same question. In 200 years of conquest, he had never seen anything like this. Every species broke eventually. Every species reached a point where survival became more important than fighting. The Kalari had built their empire on this simple truth, but the humans would not break. On the bright dawn, Captain Yuna was thinking about her grandmother. Strange, the things that came to mind when death was close. Her grandmother had been a historian, a small woman with white hair and bright eyes who loved to tell stories about old Earth. "We have always been like this," her grandmother had said once when Yuna was just a child. When the Persians came to Thermopylae, 300 soldiers stood against an army. When the Alamo fell, the defenders fought to the last man. When Stalingrad was surrounded, the people ate rats and leather, and still they would not surrender. Why? Young Yuna had asked. Why not just give up? Her grandmother had smiled. Because giving up is not in our nature. Because we would rather die standing than live on our knees. Because sometimes the only way to win is to make the enemy pay so much for victory that they learn to fear you. Yuna understood now. She finally understood. "Taiho," she said, "how many weapons do we have left?" The lieutenant checked his console. His face was gray with exhaustion, and his hands shook slightly, but his voice was steady. 2 missile launchers, 1 main cannon, and about a dozen point defense guns. The main cannon is damaged. It might fire 3 more times before it fails completely. 3 shots, Yuna repeated. Make them count. She activated the internal communication. All hands, this is the captain. I am initiating Protocol Ember. All non-essential systems will be shut down and their power redirected to weapons. This includes heating and most of life support. It is going to get cold and the air is going to get thin. But we will have enough power to keep fighting. Prepare yourselves. Protocol Ember was a last resort. A desperate measure designed for exactly this situation. Yuna had hoped she would never have to use it. The lights dimmed throughout the station as power was rerouted. The temperature began to drop immediately. Within minutes, crew members could see their breath forming small clouds in the air. Sergeant Jiwoo found emergency blankets in a storage locker and distributed them to her team. They wrapped themselves in the thin silver material and kept working. A hull breach in Section 7 needed sealing. The cold made their fingers clumsy, but they managed in the medical bay. Dohan wrapped his patients in every blanket he could find. One of them, a young engineer named Soman, was going into shock. Dohan held her hand and talked to her, keeping her conscious, keeping her fighting. "Stay with me," he said. "We are not done yet. The captain needs us." Soman looked at him with pain-filled eyes. "Are we going to die?" Dohan did not lie to her. "Probably. But we are going to make them pay for it first." Soman managed a weak smile. "Good." The Kalari Armada fired again. The bright dawn shook and groaned. Metal screamed as sections of the hull tore away. Atmosphere vented into space. 3 more crew members died, but the station's weapons answered. The main cannon fired, and its beam cut through a Kalari destroyer like a knife through paper. The ship exploded, and cheers echoed through the bright dawn's damaged corridors. Communications. Officer Hyan worked frantically at his station. He was broadcasting everything. Every moment of the battle, every death, every act of courage was being sent out on every frequency he could reach. Somewhere out there, someone was listening. Someone would remember. The galaxy needs to know, he said when Yuna asked him what he was doing. They need to know what we did here. They need to know that when the Kalari came for us, we did not beg. We fought. Yuna put her hand on his shoulder. Keep broadcasting. Until the very end. Navigator Yunji had lost her left arm in the last attack. A piece of shrapnel had taken it off, just below the elbow. Dohan had stopped the bleeding and given her painkillers, but she refused to leave her station. She sat in her chair, her remaining hand flying across the console, plotting courses and calculating trajectories. I can still do my job, she said when Yuna tried to send her to rest. One arm is enough. The Kalari High Commander watched another of his ships die. 6 now. 6 ships lost to this single stubborn station. His fleet commanders were sending him angry messages. This was taking too long. This was costing too much. Why was he not finishing this? He ordered a full assault. Every ship in the armada would fire at once. They would overwhelm the station's defenses and destroy it completely. The order went out. 200 ships adjusted their positions, bringing their weapons to bear on the bright dawn. On the station, Taiho watched the enemy ships move. He understood what was coming. Captain, they are preparing for a coordinated strike. Every ship at once. Yuna nodded. How long until they are ready? 4 minutes. 4 minutes. Yuna looked around her bridge. Only 8 people remained here now. 8 people out of the 20 who'd started the battle in this room. They were tired and wounded and scared. But they were still here. Lieutenant Taiho, she said, I need the main cannon to fire one more time. Can you do it? Taiho hesitated. The firing mechanism is damaged. Someone would have to operate it manually from the cannon itself. The radiation there is very high. Anyone who goes would receive a fatal dose within minutes. I understand. Yuna started to stand. I will go. No. Taiho was already moving toward the door. You are the captain. The crew needs you here. I will go. Taiho. He stopped at the door and looked back at her. There was peace in his eyes. My wife died on Vega 3. The Kalari killed her. Let me do this, Captain. Let me make them pay. Yuna could not speak. She could only nod. Taiho smiled, just a little. It has been an honor serving with you. Then he was gone, running through the damaged corridors toward the main cannon. The journey took him 2 minutes. He passed through sections filled with smoke and sections with no air at all. He climbed over debris and crawled through narrow gaps. His lungs burned and his body ached, but he did not stop. The main cannon chamber was hot with radiation. Warning lights flashed everywhere. Taiho ignored them. He found the manual firing controls and began the sequence. Through the small window, he could see the Kalari flagship, the largest ship in the armada, the ship where the High Commander sat and gave orders, the ship that had led the attack on Vega 3. This is for her, Taiho whispered. This is for all of them. He pressed the firing button. The cannon roared. A beam of pure energy shot across the void and struck the Kalari flagship directly on its shield generators. The shields flickered, sparked, and died. The flagship was now vulnerable. Taiho slumped against the wall, his body already failing from the radiation. But he was smiling. He had done it. He had given his captain a chance. On the bridge, Yuna saw the flagship's shields fall. All weapons. Target the enemy flagship. Fire everything we have. Missiles and energy beams reached out toward the now unprotected ship. The Kalari scrambled to move other vessels into the way to protect their commander. Some of them made it in time. Some of them did not. The flagship took 3 hits before other ships could shield it. 3 hits that tore through its hull and killed hundreds of Kalari inside. It was not destroyed, but it was wounded. Badly wounded. The High Commander felt pain for the first time in decades as his ship shook around him. And in that pain, he finally understood something about humans. They were not trying to win. They knew they could not win. They were trying to make the Kalari hurt. They were trying to make this victory so costly, so painful, that the Kalari would think twice before attacking humans again. And they were succeeding. Destroy them, the High Commander ordered, his voice cold with fury. Destroy them now. The Armada fired. The fire from 200 ships hit the bright dawn all at once. The station screamed. Metal twisted and broke. Entire sections were torn away and sent spinning into the void. The lights went out. The emergency lights came on, painting everything in red. Captain Yuna was thrown from her chair. She hit the floor hard and felt something crack in her ribs. Pain shot through her body, but she forced herself to stand. Around her, consoles were exploding. Smoke filled the air. She could hear screaming from somewhere in the station. "Report," she called out. Her voice was rough from the smoke. Hyan pulled himself up from behind his damaged console. Blood was running from a cut on his forehead, but he was alive. "We lost decks 4 through 7 completely. Decks 2 and 3 are venting atmosphere. We have hull breaches in almost every section." "How many crew?" Yuna asked, though she did not want to know the answer. Hyan checked his screen. His face went pale. 19? 19 still showing life signs. 19. They had started with 43. Yuna closed her eyes for a moment and let the grief wash over her. 24 people dead. 24 lives ended. Friends and colleagues and good soldiers, all gone. But she could not stop to mourn. Not yet. There would be time for grief later, if any of them survived. "Navigation, what is our position?" Yunji's voice came through the communication system. She was still at her station, still working with one arm. "We are 3 kilometers from the Kalari flagship. Our momentum is carrying us forward. We will reach collision distance in 12 minutes. Collision distance. Yuna had not planned to ram the flagship. But now, looking at the damage around her, she realized there was no other option. The weapons were gone. The engines were failing. The only thing the Bright Dawn could do now was become a weapon itself. "All hands," she said into the communication system. "This is the captain. We are going to ram the enemy flagship. I am ordering all surviving crew to the escape pods." That is not a request. That is an order. For a moment there was silence. Then Sergeant Jiwoo's voice came through. "Captain, the escape pods on my deck are destroyed. We cannot leave." Engineer Bora spoke next. "Same here, Captain. No pods. One by one, the survivors reported in. Out of 19 people, only 6 had access to working escape pods. And none of them wanted to use them." "Captain," said Dohan from the medical bay, "I have 3 patients who cannot be moved. I will not leave them." "I'm staying too," said Yunji. "Someone needs to keep us on course." Yuna felt tears in her eyes. These people, these brave, stubborn people, were choosing to die with her rather than abandon their posts. She did not have words to express what she felt. "Thank you," she said quietly. "All of you." A new voice came through the communication. It was young and nervous, belonging to Ensign Mireille. She was only 22 years old, fresh from the academy. This was her first assignment. It was probably going to be her last. "Captain, I made it to an escape pod. It is working. I can leave." Yuna felt relief. At least one of them would survive. "Go, Ensign. Get to the colony below. Tell them what happened here." There was a pause. Then Mireille spoke again. "Captain, I have a question first. What is it? What happens if we win?" The question surprised Yuna. Win? They were not going to win. They were going to die. The best they could hope for was to take the Kalari flagship with them. I do not understand, Una said. No one has ever beaten the Kalari, Myre continued. Her voice was growing stronger, more confident. No species has ever made them hurt like we are hurting them. What happens if we do something no one has ever done? What happens if we show the galaxy that the Kalari can bleed? Una had no answer. She had been so focused on buying time for the colony that she had not thought about what their fight might mean to others. To the dozens of species living under Kalari rule. To the worlds that had surrendered without fighting because they believed resistance was impossible. I do not know, she admitted. We might inspire others to fight. We might show them that the Kalari are not unbeatable. Then I am staying, said Myre. I am coming back to the bridge. If we are going to change history, I want to be there. Una wanted to argue. She wanted to order Myre into that escape pod and force her to leave. But she could hear the determination in the young woman's voice. She knew that tone. She had used it herself many times. Hurry, she said. We do not have much time. 3 minutes later, Myre arrived on the bridge. She was small and thin, with short black hair and bright eyes that seemed too young for the battlefield. But there was steel in her spine and fire in her heart. Ensign Myre, reporting for duty, she said. Saluting. Una almost laughed. Saluting. In the middle of a burning bridge. Surrounded by death, the young ensign was saluting. It was absurd. It was beautiful. It was so very human. Take the weapons station, Una said. Whatever we have left, you are in charge of it. Myre sat down and began checking the systems. We have 4-point defense guns still working. And 1 missile launcher with 3 missiles. Make them count. The Kalari flagship was trying to move away from them. It was wounded from Taiho's final shot, moving slowly, its engines damaged. But it was still faster than the bright dawn. They are going to escape, Yunji reported. At current speeds, they will be out of ramming range in 4 minutes. Una clenched her fists. They had come so close. So close to striking a real blow against the enemy. And now the flagship was going to slip away. Is there anything we can do? She asked. Anything at all? Bora's voice came through from engineering. Captain, I might be able to give you 1 more burst of speed, but it will burn out the engines completely. We will have no control after that. Do it. It will also likely cause a reactor breach. When we hit them, the reactor will explode. Una understood. How big an explosion? Big enough to destroy both ships. Maybe big enough to damage others nearby. Una looked at her crew. At Hyan, still broadcasting their story to the galaxy. At Myre, her young face lit by the glow of weapon displays. At the empty chairs where friends had sat just hours ago. Do it, she said again. The engines roared 1 final time. The bright dawn surged forward, gaining speed. On the Kalari flagship, alarms began to sound. The High Commander shouted orders, demanding more speed, demanding that his ship escape. But it was too late. 1 minute to impact, Yunji reported. Her voice was calm, almost peaceful. Una stood at the center of her bridge. She thought about the colony below, about the ships that were even now carrying people to safety. She thought about Taiho, who had given his life to wound the flagship. She thought about all the crew members who had died today. It was worth it, she said quietly. All of it. Myre looked up from her station. Captain, I just wanted to say thank you for letting me stay, for letting me be part of this. Una smiled. Thank you for staying. Hyan spoke up. Captain, I am getting a signal from the colony. They want to know if we are still alive. Tell them yes. Tell them we are about to ram the enemy flagship. Tell them to remember us. Hyan typed quickly, sending the message. Done. 30 seconds. Yunji said. The Kalari flagship filled the view screen. It was huge, a mountain of metal and weapons, and the bright dawn was heading straight for it. Yuna took a deep breath. It has been an honor serving with all of you. The honor was ours, Captain, Hayam replied. 15 seconds. Mireille closed her eyes and whispered something. A prayer, maybe. Or a goodbye. 10 seconds. Yunji's hand moved across her console, making tiny adjustments, keeping them on course until the very end. 5 seconds. Yuna watched the flagship grow larger and larger. Impact. The bright dawn struck the Kalari flagship like a hammer striking glass. Metal crumpled and tore. Both ships screamed as they were crushed together. The reactor breached, and for one brief moment, there was light brighter than any sun. Then darkness, then silence. Yuna woke up in darkness. For a long moment, she did not know where she was or what had happened. Her body was a map of pain. Every breath hurt. Every movement sent sharp needles through her muscles. Slowly, memory returned. The battle. The ramming. The explosion. She was alive. Somehow, impossibly, she was alive. She opened her eyes. She was lying in a pile of twisted metal and broken machinery. Above her, through gaps in the wreckage, she could see stars. The wall next to her was not a wall at all. It was part of the Kalari flagship's hull, fused together with pieces of the bright dawn. The two ships had become one. A twisted, broken thing, half human and half Kalari. Dead and drifting in space. Yuna tried to move. Pain screamed through her left leg, and she bit back a cry. Looking down, she saw that her leg was trapped under a heavy beam. It was not crushed, but it was pinned firmly in place. She lay there for a while, gathering her strength. The air was thin but breathable. Some life support system, either human or Kalari, was still working. She could survive for now, but she needed to get free. She needed to find out if anyone else had survived. With a grunt of effort, she pulled herself upward. The beam would not move, but she found that by twisting her body a certain way, she could slowly work her leg free. It took almost an hour. By the end, she was covered in sweat and shaking with exhaustion. But she was free. She stood carefully, testing her weight on the injured leg. It hurt, but it held. Good enough. She began to move through the wreckage, searching for survivors. The few ships created a maze of corridors and rooms that made no sense. Human hallways ended in Kalari machinery. Kalari doors opened into human quarters. Everything was broken and strange. She found Hyan first. He was dead, his body half buried under a collapsed console. His hand was still reaching for the communication controls. He had been broadcasting until the very end. Yuna closed his eyes and said a quiet prayer. Then she kept moving. She found Mireille next. The young ensign was unconscious but breathing. A piece of metal had cut her forehead, but the wound was not deep. Yuna checked her pulse, found it strong, and decided to come back for her after exploring more of the wreckage. Over the next 2 hours, Yuna found 4 more human survivors. Yunji was badly injured, her remaining arm broken in 3 places, but she was alive and conscious. Bor had somehow survived the reactor breach, protected by an emergency shield that had activated at the last moment. Dohan was found in what remained of the medical bay, still guarding his patients. 2 of them were dead, but 1 was alive. 7 survivors. Out of 19 who had been on the station during the final impact, 7 had made it. They gathered in a small open space where human and Kalari metal met. They were wounded and tired and had no idea how they were going to survive. But they were together. What now, Captain? Bor asked. Her voice was weak but steady. Before Yuna could answer, she heard a sound. A groan, a cry of pain. It was coming from somewhere in the Kalari section of the wreckage. She held up her hand for silence. Everyone listened. The sound came again. It was definitely a voice. A Kalari voice. "Stay here," Yuna said. "I will check it out." She moved carefully into the Kalari section. The architecture was strange to her eyes. The walls curved in ways that human walls never did. The light was different, casting odd shadows. But she could follow the sounds easily enough. She found the source in what must have been some kind of control room. A young Kalari soldier was trapped under a heavy piece of machinery. His lower body was pinned, and dark blood was pooling around him. He was dying. Yuna stopped at the entrance and looked at him. He looked back at her with 4 dark eyes. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The Kalari were monsters. Everyone knew this. They had destroyed 12 star systems. They had killed billions of people. They had come to Vega 7 to murder 3 million more. They showed no mercy to any species they conquered. Every instinct told Yuna to leave. Let him die. He deserved it. His people had killed her friends. His people had forced her to sacrifice her crew. His people were evil. But as she stood there looking at his pain-filled eyes, she saw something that surprised her. He was young. Very young by Kalari standards. Barely an adult. He was probably a soldier because he had been told to be one, not because he had chosen to be one. He was scared. He was in pain. And he was alone. Yuna thought about what made humans different from other species. It was not their strength. Many species were stronger. It was not their technology. Many species were more advanced. It was something else. Something harder to define. Humans cared. Even when they should not. Even when it made no sense. Even when the person in front of them was an enemy who would have killed them without a second thought. Humans cared. She walked over to the young Kalari and examined the machinery pinning him down. It was heavy, but she thought she could move it if she used a piece of metal as a lever. "I am going to try to free you," she said. She did not know if he could understand her. She did not care. This might hurt. The Kalari stared at her. His eyes were wide with confusion. He made a sound in his language that she could not understand. Yuna found a metal bar and wedged it under the machinery. She pushed down with all her weight. The machinery shifted slightly. She pushed again, harder. It shifted more. On the third push, it moved enough for the Kalari to pull himself free. He dragged himself backward, away from the machine, leaving a trail of blood behind him. Yuna dropped the bar and moved to his side. The wound on his lower body was bad. Very bad. He needed medical attention soon, or he would die. She pulled off her jacket and pressed it against the wound, applying pressure to slow the bleeding. The Kalari flinched at her touch but did not pull away. "Hold this here," she said, guiding his hand to the jacket. "Press hard." He looked at her. Then, slowly he did as she said. Yuna sat back and took a breath. She was exhausted. Her whole body ached. She was sitting on the floor of an enemy ship, helping a soldier whose people had tried to kill her. The situation was absurd. "Why?" the Kalari asked. Yuna looked at him in surprise. He could speak her language. Or at least some of it. Why what? Why help? He gestured at himself, at her, at the wreckage around them. Enemy. I am enemy. Yuna thought about the question. Why was she helping him? He was right. He was the enemy. His people had done terrible things. By any logical measure, she should let him die. But logic had nothing to do with it. "Because you are hurt," she said simply. "Because you are in pain. Because I can help." The Kalari stared at her. His 4 eyes blinked slowly, one pair after the other. He did not seem to understand. "Your people," he said. "We kill your people. Many, many kills. You should hate." "I do hate," Yuna admitted. "I hate what your people have done. I hate that my friends are dead. I hate this war and everything about it. She paused. But I do not hate you. You are just a soldier. You did not choose to be here any more than I did. The Kalari was silent for a long time. Then he made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a sob. Strange, he said. Humans are strange. Yes, Yuna agreed. We are. Footsteps echoed in the corridor behind her. Yuna turned to see 4 Kalari soldiers approaching, their weapons raised. They must have been searching the wreckage, looking for survivors. And now they had found her. The young Kalari on the floor suddenly moved. He pushed himself up on one arm and said something in his own language. His voice was urgent, commanding. The soldiers stopped. The young Kalari spoke again. This time, his voice was softer, almost pleading. The soldiers looked at Yuna, then at the young Kalari, then at Yuna again. Slowly, very slowly, they lowered their weapons. Yuna did not move. She barely breathed. She did not know what was happening, but she knew that this moment was important. Something was changing. Something was shifting. The young Kalari looked at her with his 4 dark eyes. And in those eyes, she saw something that no human had ever seen from a Kalari before. Gratitude. You save me, he said quietly. Now I save you. This is fair? Yuna nodded slowly. Yes, this is fair. The young Kalari turned to the soldiers and spoke again. Whatever he said made them look uncomfortable. But they did not raise their weapons again. Instead, they waited. Come, the young Kalari said to Yuna. Your people. Bring them. We talk. No more fighting. Talk. Yuna stood up. Her legs were shaking. Her heart was pounding. But for the first time since the battle began, she felt something that was not fear or anger or grief. She felt hope. The Kalari High Council chamber was vast. The ceiling rose so high that it disappeared in the shadow. The walls were covered with symbols and carvings that told the history of Kalari conquest. 12 star systems, each represented by a broken chain. Hundreds of conquered species, each shown kneeling before Kalari masters. Captain Yuna stood at the center of the chamber and tried not to show her fear. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Vega 7. 3 months of negotiations, of careful diplomacy, of slowly building something that had never existed before. Trust between humans and Kalari. The young soldier she had saved was named Sahan in the human translation. His real name was longer and more complex, full of clicking sounds that human tongues could not make. But Sahan was close enough. He had become the bridge between the 2 species, translating not just words but ideas. He stood beside Yuna now, his wounds healed, but his walk still slow. He had recovered, thanks to the medical care that humans and Kalari had provided together. The first time the 2 species had ever worked together on anything. Behind Yuna stood the survivors of the Bright Dawn, 11 people in total. Myray, her forehead now marked by a thin scar. Yunji, her arm in a regeneration cast. Bora, Doan, and the others. They wore clean uniforms now, but the marks of battle were still visible on their faces. The High Council sat in a semicircle before them. 12 ancient Kalari, their scales dark with age, their eyes cold and calculating. They had ruled the Kalari Empire for centuries. They had ordered the destruction of countless worlds. They had never, in all their long lives, spoken to a conquered species as equals. Until now. The eldest counselor leaned forward. His name was Vother, and he had been old when Yuna's grandmother was born. He had seen more death than any being should ever see. And yet, when he looked at the small group of humans before him, there was something new in his ancient eyes. Curiosity. We have watched the recordings, Vother said. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. We have seen what happened on your station. We have seen your crew die, one by one, and still fight. We have seen your ship ram our flagship. We have seen you emerge from the wreckage and save one of our soldiers." He paused. The chamber was silent. "We do not understand," Vather admitted. "No species has ever fought us like this. No species has ever shown such fury, and then such mercy. You are a contradiction. You are warriors and healers. You are destroyers and saviors. You are everything at once." Yuna took a breath. She had practiced what she wanted to say, rehearsed it 100 times. But now, standing here, the words felt wrong. Too formal, too careful. She decided to speak from her heart instead. "We are not a contradiction," she said. "We are simply human. We fight hard because we have to. Because there are things worth fighting for. Our families, our homes, our freedom. When those things are threatened, we will do anything to protect them. We will die before we surrender." She paused, looking at the ancient faces before her. "But fighting has never been our goal. We fight so that one day we can stop fighting. Every war we have ever waged, every battle we have ever fought, has been to reach a moment of peace. We do not enjoy destruction. We do not celebrate death. We fight because we must, not because we want to." Vather tilted his head. "And the mercy? Why did you save the soldier? You had won nothing. You had lost everything. Helping him gave you no advantage." Yuna smiled sadly. "That is exactly why I helped him. Because there was no advantage. Because it was not about winning or losing. It was about being human." She stepped forward, closer to the council. "I looked at that young soldier, and I did not see an enemy. I saw a person in pain. I saw someone who was scared and alone and dying. And I could not walk away. It is not in my nature. It is not in our nature." "Even though his people killed your friends?" Vather asked. "Even though we have destroyed worlds? Even though we would have killed every human on Vega 7 if you had not stopped us?" "Yes," Yuna said simply. "Even then," the council murmured among themselves. Yuna could not understand their words, but she could read their body language. They were confused, uncertain. For beings who had spent centuries believing they understood the universe, meeting humans had shaken everything they knew. Sehan stepped forward. His voice was soft but clear. "Honored council," he said in Kalari, then switched to human speech so Yuna could understand. "I was there. I was dying, and she saved me. I looked into her eyes and saw something I had never seen before. Not fear, not hatred, compassion. She cared about me, an enemy soldier, for no reason except that I was hurt." He turned to look at Yuna, and there was deep emotion in his 4 eyes. "We have conquered many species," he continued. "We have defeated them all. But we have never faced anything like this. The humans did not lose at Vega 7. They won. Not by destroying us, but by showing us something we had forgotten. Something we may have never known." "What?" Vather asked. Sehan looked at the old counselor. "That there is more to strength than destruction. That the strongest thing a warrior can do is put down their weapon and offer help to a fallen enemy. That true power is not measured in ships destroyed or worlds conquered, but in the choice to be kind when kindness seems foolish." The chamber fell silent again. The council members looked at each other, communicating in ways that Yuna could not read. Finally, Vather spoke again. "We offer terms," he said. "Not surrender. Not conquest. Something new. Something that has never happened in our history." He paused, as if the words were difficult to say. "We offer dialogue. We offer the chance to talk, to learn, to understand each other. We offer an end to the war." Yuna felt her heart skip. This was more than she had hoped for. More than anyone had thought possible. "Why?" she asked. "Why now? Why after everything that has happened? Vather looked at her for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quieter, almost gentle. Because you have shown us that we were wrong. We believed that the universe was simple. Strong species conquer. Weak species submit. That was the natural order. That was truth. He shook his ancient head. But you humans have proven that strength takes many forms. The strength to fight against impossible odds. The strength to sacrifice everything for others. And the strength to show mercy when mercy makes no sense. He leaned forward in his seat. Your species is either the most dangerous thing in this galaxy, or the only hope it has. We want to find out which. And we cannot do that if we are fighting you. Yuna turned to look at her crew. At Mireille, who had chosen to stay and become part of history. At Yunji, who had kept them on course until the very end. At all of them, who had survived when survival seemed impossible. They nodded. They trusted her. Whatever she decided, they would support. Yuna turned back to the council. We accept your offer, she said. Not because we are weak. Not because we are afraid. But because we have been asking ourselves the same question you asked. Are we destroyers or saviors? Are we a threat or a hope? She smiled, tired but honest. We've been trying to answer that question for 10,000 years. Maybe you can help us find out. The treaty was signed 1 week later. It was called the Treaty of Vega 7, and it marked the first time in galactic history that the Kalari had ever made peace with another species. It was not easy. There were factions on both sides who wanted war. There were old hatreds and old wounds that would take generations to heal. But the treaty held. Day after day, year after year, it held. Saham became the first Kalari ambassador to Earth. He brought his family to meet Admiral Yuna, as she was now called. His children played with human children in a garden built on a station that had been constructed from the wreckage of 2 ships, fused together. They called it New Dawn. And somewhere in the vast silence of space, other species watched. They had heard the stories. They had seen the recordings that Hyon had broadcast until the very end. They knew what humans had done at Vega-7. They knew about the fury and the sacrifice and the impossible victory. But more than that, they knew about the mercy. About the human captain who had crawled through wreckage to save an enemy soldier. About the moment when hatred could have won and kindness won instead. They began to wonder if the humans could reach the Kalari, who had never known peace. What else might be possible? What other ancient hatreds might be healed? What other endless wars might finally end? The battle ended. The enemies fell silent. And in one moment of senseless, stubborn compassion, everything changed. Because that is what humans do. They fight like demons when they have to. And then, when the fighting is done, they reach out their hands and help their enemies stand. That is the human way. That has always been the human way. And that is why, across the galaxy, species who had never hoped for anything began to hope. Because the humans had shown them that even in the darkest void, even after the worst battles, even between the oldest enemies, there is always the possibility of a new dawn. Always.